and welcome to New Foundation Unity. This is our fourth in the series on relationships in the Bible. If you are having technical difficulty, I hope you are not, but do go to Mark's website. Oh. Hi, Dean.
Hi, it's not working.
Well, it's turned on, and I just talked to Mark. It looks fine from here. So why don't you come on over? The door's open.
Well, I haven't eaten dinner yet, so I was going to eat it while I watched.
Can you hear it?
Can you hear
okay,
it?
Well,
Go to Mark's
no,
website.
I can't do anything.
Go to Mark's website, and there's an arrow that says "Listen to Eleanor's." Okay.
I did. And then it has a screen,
Uh-huh.
and it says that there are 4 people online,
Okay.
that there are me and 3 other viewers.
Okay.
And then there's the screen, and you can make it big and you can make it small, but it doesn't have anything on it.
Okay. Well, email Mark at truthunity.net, and
Okay, and I'll tell him what's going on.
you tell him. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, thanks.
Bye bye. If anyone else is having difficulty, email Mark at truthunity.net. It seems for the last few weeks, at least one person has been having difficulty either viewing or hearing, or both. So tonight, as we begin our time together, I'll invite you to close your eyes for a moment and become still. And as you turn within, acknowledge within you that one source, one power, one presence, one life, one mind, that we are one with that one. And let us rest in the silence for a few moments as we acknowledge the truth of our being in the silence. And as we begin to return our attention to this time and this place, we give thanks that we have access to the source of life, the source of renewing, revitalizing life at the source of our being. We have guidance for every moment, substance for every need, and the power to resurrect that connection with our divine source, and for an awareness of that truth that sets us free. We are so grateful, and we do give thanks in the name and through the power of our master teacher, our way shower, Jesus Christ. Amen. Tonight, we're going to talk about sisters. And before we do, I would like to do a brief review and ask all of you to consider some things to look for in these lessons. Last time, when we talked about brothers, we talked about Jacob and Esau. We talked about Joseph and his brothers, the prodigal and his brother, and some others. But remember that our primary relationship is with God, and that is oneness. So if there is conflict in any of our relationships, then think about what is required in order to resolve that conflict back into a state of unity. We're going to consider a couple of those tonight before we move on to sisters. And I have a quote here from Myrtle Fillmore that I would like to read to you. Sorry, it's from Charles and Cora Fillmore. The one and only object of man's existence is the development of his soul, and any attainment, whether mental or material, that cannot be associated with and counted as an aid toward that end will ultimately be refused. Then there's one other. This is from Myrtle, and she writes, "The real purpose of your life is to express the creation of God, to unfold the many departments of your mind which God has planned for you and which will enable you to know and to do His will. That is our purpose in life, to succeed in bringing forth God's perfect idea of the perfect man or woman." And one of the funniest things that Myrtle said was, we must not only be good, but good for something in this world in which we live. And with that in mind, let us consider what happened with Jacob and Esau. How this conflict between Jacob and Esau got started. Jacob's mother, Rebekah, helped him rob his brother Esau of his birthright and sent him off to Uncle Laban Meanwhile, Esau is furious, so there is a great rift between the two brothers. He is there in Uncle Laban's country, Haran, and has worked hard for 20 years. He's paid his debts to Uncle Laban, and he decides that it's time to come home. And so he heads for home, but there's still a little conflict here. Laban notices that Jacob has kind of done a number on him again with all the sheep and goats and cattle, and so he hurries after him. Laban does not want Jacob to go home. Jacob has helped him quite a bit in making him wealthy. So he catches up with him and says, "What have you done to me?" This is about the third time we've heard this phrase in these stories. And they end up with a non-aggression pact which satisfies all. Rachel and Leah are actually in agreement to depart, to go back, and Laban is resigned that Jacob is now going home with the two daughters, with all of his cattle and sheep and goats, and wants him to take good care of his two daughters. So it's partly resolved. Then he heads for home, gets to the place where he wrestles with the angel, and here's Esau coming at him with 400 men. Now, Jacob comes with two different groups of stuff. The first one is a peace offering for Esau. A whole bunch of sheep and goats and cattle to repay him for having stolen the birthright. That is the material birthright. And the other group acts as a buffer to protect his goods and wives and children, just in case those 400 men are not happy. And so I think we need to read what it was that Jacob had to do in order to reconcile with his brother Esau. And in this you will find a lesson for all of us. And this is found in Genesis chapter 32, and beginning, actually it's in chapter 33. And it says here that here they are at the edge of the river, Esau and his 400 men on one side, Jacob and all of his animals, wives, and children on the other. And it says that Jacob went over, leaving everything on one side of the river. He goes over and meets Esau on his own, by himself. That's important because it indicates his seriousness about this reconciliation. And what happens? Esau runs to meet him. And Jacob offers him repayment. Esau fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. And when Esau raised his eyes and saw the women and children, he said, "Who are these with you?" Jacob said, "The children whom God has graciously given your servant." Then the maids drew near, they and their children, and bowed down. Leah likewise and her children drew near and bowed down. And last Joseph and Rachel drew near, and they bowed down. Esau said, "What do you mean by all this company which I met?" Jacob answered, "To find favor in the sight of my Lord." But Esau said, "I have sufficient, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself." Jacob said, "No, I pray you, if I have found favor in your sight, then accept my present from my hand, for truly to see your face is like seeing the face of God." Okay, Jacob deserves a name change. He gets his name changed because he comes face to face. He perceives the God presence in his brother Esau. But he had to leave everything on one side and go and meet him in a place where it was just Jacob and Esau, and that's where the reconciliation took place. Okay, so that's one. And then Joseph and his brothers, another remarkable reconciliation. And you remember that Joseph had ended up in Egypt after having been beaten and stripped of his beautiful coat and sold into slavery, all these adventures in Egypt. And in chapter 50, this is pretty much getting to the end of Genesis. Chapter 50, that famous line where his brothers are somewhat afraid that Joseph is going to retaliate. And he said, "No, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good." Okay, so Joseph has risen from an immature level of imagination. Remember, he was the dreamer, and he used his dreams at first for his ego agenda, and it separated him from his brothers. They got angry, they were jealous. I mean, it's one thing to have dreams, but to go and lord it over your brothers when you're already the favorite. And so you've seen the journey. He's been able to use his dreams, put his capacity to interpret dreams to a higher purpose. And he said, "I came here because I was able to give you life." And remember, every one of his brothers represents one of our 12 divine faculties in their immature state. Please keep the light up. It's important for He reconciles with Benjamin. It's a reunion with Benjamin. Faith and imagination always go together. Faith without imagination. Faith is the ability to perceive the divine substance. And imagination is the capacity to form and shape that substance into experience. And so there's a whole lot about Benjamin had to come down with his brothers in order to satisfy Joseph. So he has a little fun with them, but in the end he reveals who he is, and there is this great reconciliation. Very famous line, "You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good.
And that's verse 20, in case anybody's looking.
Verse 20, we're in chapter 50 of Genesis. Okay, so that then sets us up for the sisters. And we see in the sisters how everything that happened to Jacob and Esau had an effect on Rachel and Leah. Okay, let's look at their names first. Leah represents that aspect of the soul, the human soul, weary. Her name means weary. Whereas Rachel, migrating. She goes in this story from being a lamb to a ewe. So a more mature aspect of the soul. So it's two aspects of the evolving soul. And there is strife between them. Okay, and just as Rebekah helped Jacob deceive his older brother, so Laban helps his older daughter deceive Jacob. And what we find is the strife originates from amongst the two sisters because Jacob loves Rachel and despises Leah.
You think so?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the jealousy there every time. But Leah is compensated with sons. She has 6 sons, and I do want to read you what she says after the birth of each of her sons. She says, maybe this one will make my husband love me. And then the next one, oh, this one for sure will cause my husband to draw near. And then the third one, surely this one will make my husband love me. She wants the love of her husband. Rachel wants sons. And so she sells her marriage right to her sister in order to get the mandrakes. But it's not the mandrakes that give her the sons. It is that God opened her womb. Only God is our only true parent. You know, we think we have children, they're our children, and we're very possessive, but it's really God's child. And so God gives her Joseph and then Benjamin. So here we have friction on the feeling level, just as between Esau and Jacob, we had friction on the thinking level.
Do you think, can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
In verse 35, when
What chapter are you in?
I'm at 29 there, you were just talking about what it says about her first.
Yeah.
Is there some sort of resolution? Because it feels like, cause she says about Judah, she says, this time I'll praise the Lord. It didn't have anything to do with her. Doesn't say anything about her husband at all. She said, this time, do you think there's any, like she's coming to kind of peace with the fact now that she has 4 sons?
Well, she has 3 more, and she still goes for the love of her husband. Let's see, number 4. Jacob said,
Then Leah said, God has given me my wages. I'm at verse 18, 17.
Yeah. 19. So this is when the Lord saw that Leah was hated, he opened her womb. Okay, so, but Rachel was barren. Okay, things are not in divine order. So they envy each other what the other has. Rachel envies her, the sons, because you are not considered a real woman unless you bore children. Okay, you're not fruitful, where the order was to be fruitful and multiply. But Leah is unhappy because she has not the love of her husband. So once she stopped bearing, then he went to Rachel. So there's this going on. Everything is out of order. And she said, now this time my husband will be joined to me, because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore, the name was called Levi. Levi, love. Okay. The faculty of love. And she conceived again and bore a son and said, this time I will praise the Lord. Therefore she called his name Judah. Then she ceased bearing. Okay. When Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, she envied her sister. Here we have the envy. And she said to Jacob, give me children or I shall die. And this makes Jacob angry, because he says, who am I in the place of God? Only God can open your womb. And she said, all right, then here's my maid. And then the maid, Rachel's maid, gives, and Jacob give her 2 sons. Okay. But then Rachel says, God has judged me and has also heard my voice and given me a son. So she acknowledges that God has heard her prayer. Therefore, she called his name Dan. All right. Rachel's maid, Bilhah, conceived again and bore a 2nd son. Then Rachel said, with mighty wrestlings have I wrestled with my sister and have prevailed. So she called his name Naphtali. Okay. Then when Leah saw that she had ceased bearing children, she took her maid Zilpah and gave her to Jacob. Okay, so now she's coming back. And then Leah and her maid, so that the kids continue. The last 2 sons. Now here's where Reuben finds the mandrakes, and he brings them to his mother. That was called the fertility apple. All right, mandrakes, herbs that were supposed to bring fertility. And here's where Rachel sells, in essence, she bargains for her marriage rights. So she gives Leah what she wants. And so she allows her to go sleep with her husband, and in exchange for the mandrakes. And then she realizes it's not the mandrakes at all. But it's enough to satisfy Leah, I guess, and says, now my husband will honor me because I have borne him 6 sons. And so just always, no matter what she does, Jacob never loves Leah. Okay, so that is the cause of strife on the feeling level, this envy, covetousness. Yeah, we have a little brother-sister thing going on here, don't we? Okay. All right, so notice the compensation. God compensated Leah, and God compensated Rachel.
Do you think there's anything to, in verse 21, Leah has a daughter, Dinah?
Yes.
So that's
yes.
7 children.
Okay.
So her childbearing is complete at the 7?
Well, that is all she has, but Dinah is important because she's the only girl. And Reuben ends up forfeiting his, as the oldest son, he forfeits his birthright because he has revenge, he got revenge on those people in Shechem for having violated his sister, Dinah. So he now is no longer eligible for the birthright. Okay. That's, it's kind of a sub, but it's this whole thing about birthright, it's echoed throughout this whole story, just like it was with the prodigal. The birthright, there's 2 birthrights. Our true birthright that is not just for the oldest son, it's for everyone, and that's our birthright for health, happiness, fulfillment, access to God, equal access to God directly. On a material level, it's very spelled out. Oldest son gets 2/3, younger son gets 1/3, and if there's more, it's fanned out accordingly. Okay, so what happens is that Laban and Joseph have a covenant, and there is a sort of reconciliation between Rachel and Leah. At least they have an agreement that they will both go back to go home with Jacob. Okay, so important in any conflict is the reconciliation, because if we know our oneness with God, but we are at odds with our brothers or our sisters, then we're not truly in tune with the God presence. We have to always come back to the one power, one presence. And if everything is reconciled within us, then we have a harmonious relationship with our sisters, who are our sisters. Inside, in all of our feelings and all of our thinking for our brothers, all right? And then others, we are one with all life. If we all come from the same source, God opens the womb. Okay. So that's one thing to look for in all of these stories, is what brings about the reconciliation. Okay.
But can I just?
Yeah.
It's almost, it's almost sad because when they say that they'll go back with him, it's not. Rachel doesn't say, because I love you, you're my husband, because you love me, because I'm your wife. What she says is, our father sold us, and he's wasted everything that he got paid for us. We don't have anything left here. So it's kind of like, what else can we do? It's really kind of pathetic. I don't know. Yeah. Which shows you the result of deception. Okay? Mm-hmm. This is what she's saying. When you deceive someone, when you have an agenda, Laban had an agenda. Rebecca had an agenda. And so when they find out, the deception's still going on.
So let's get out of here and let's go to a new place. I think that's what she's saying. But right to the end, when Rachel dies in childbirth, he loves her to the very end. Now, so those two sisters, it's not like the kind of heartfelt forgiveness, I think that's what you're saying, that we need to have. But how about Mary and Martha? So let's talk about Mary and Martha. Mary and Martha, two sisters whom Jesus loved. They lived in Bethany, which is 2 miles, it says, from Jerusalem. Okay, 2 miles. Jerusalem, place of peace. Bethany, 2 miles away. A consciousness of duality, and therefore it is the house of affliction. Now, and also the capacity to overcome affliction.
What is the house of affliction?
Bethany.
Bethany?
Yeah. Okay.
I never thought of it that way. By eat? I have to look that up.
Okay.
It is a house.
Yeah.
Definitely a house.
House. A consciousness. This is duality. It's 2 miles from the place of peace. So it's a duality away. It's like being kicked out of the garden. All right.
Wow, that's counterintuitive because of what's coming upon Jesus in Jerusalem is his passion and death of Jesus.
Yeah.
And where he goes to for peace and consolation and relaxation is Bethany.
Yeah, that's right.
So
yeah.
Upside down. Wow.
Because the outer and the inner are at odds.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, here we have the need to reconcile, and we do here, and I'll show you how we do. Okay. Now, in chapter 11 of John, we have the whole story of the resurrection of Lazarus. I'm not going to read you the whole thing because it's too long, but here's the way it goes. Jesus is somewhere else, and he gets word that Lazarus has died. Okay. And he tells the disciples, Lazarus is asleep, which is an Aramaic idiom for what we call death. Okay? He is asleep, but I am going to wake him. And the disciples, being in human consciousness, they're not very bright, and they say, oh, well, if he's asleep, then he'll recover. No big deal. And Jesus said, and he stayed where he was 2 more days. Okay, so 2 more days. Which is not what you would think. But you see, there is this illusion that somehow Jesus has to be there in order to heal. In the very first sign after the wedding at Cana, Jesus healed the official's son with distant healing. You do not have to be present for healing to take place. So when Lazarus is dead, what is Lazarus in us? What part of us has died? Okay. And if you want to answer that, you can. But what he has died to is his consciousness of his divine origin He has lost that sense of connection with the I am. And he is in the tomb of human limitation. So,
anything about Lazarus himself, though,
yeah, it means whom God helps. That's what his name means. Whom God helps and helpless. Okay, so if you are connected, if the I am is connected, God is helping you through the Christ in you. But helpless, if you're not connected, you're helpless.
And where can we find that in John, the story about
11, John 11. The whole story of the resurrection is in John 11. Important always to look up the names of the people if you want to know what place they occupy in consciousness. All right, so here comes Jesus to Bethany, and guess who's out there to meet him? Martha. All right, hospitality in an outer way. Martha is the hospitable one. Hospitable, very important. She welcomes him, but she guilt trips it. Listen to this. If you had been here, my brother would not have died. All right? Meaning that you're to blame, Jesus. You're to blame. You didn't come. We told you. And then and Jesus says, your brother will rise again. And she says, yeah, I know. On the final day, and so she's reciting the conventional theology of the time. Yes, I know he will rise again at the resurrection on the last day. And Jesus says, I am the resurrection and the life. This is the affirmation that Myrtle Fillmore used also. The I of you is that revitalizing power that can restore that sense of connection, that can renew, restore, strengthen, give life to those parts in consciousness that have become weary and have died. They're still there, but functionally they're not. And so we are spiritually dead if we lose that sense of connection to the I am presence. Okay, so Mary, remember Mary. Here's the scripture passage in Mary that gives you the relationship. She, in Luke 10, 30, I can't see it from here. 38. Luke 10, 38 to 42, and you get the relationship right there, that she has a different relationship to Jesus than Martha does. Martha ministers to the physical, material needs. She's the one cooking in the kitchen and serving, and Mary is the one who is studying at the feet of Jesus, understanding.
You're not at 10 there, you're at 12. You're at the beginning of chapter 12. If you're looking at
No, I was...
the...
No, here.
Oh, you're in Luke, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
We'll go to John next. Okay, that's just to give you an idea of the relationship between Martha and Mary. One, Martha is the doer, and Mary is the devoted student. And if you are doing work and you're irritated and frustrated and complaining, you're not doing your right work. Okay, something's amiss here, because service is joyful.
You know, but there's, and I'm gonna play the devil's advocate here a little bit with Martha, because it says here that in verse 38, and Martha welcomed him into her home. So she has the intention And the practice of being very hospitable. Maybe,
Okay.
maybe takes it over the edge a little bit. Maybe takes it over the top.
Yes, she is
But
hospitable.
understand, but basically, she's trying to be hospitable.
No, she is hospitable, no question. But Mary is hospitable in the way that counts. She's open and receptive to the teachings. And the reason why Jesus says Mary has chosen the good portion or the good part, because what is good is lasting. If you study spiritual truth and you apply spiritual truth, that is lasting good. The truth never changes. Those principles are yours for life. That's the kind of hospitality that then results in outer service. If you are truly connected to what your gifts are, that's why I read that piece from the Fillmores, because we all have different gifts. And to find out what those gifts are is extremely important, because otherwise we're going to end up doing work and fretting and getting burned out and fatigued. But each of us has something that would be our joy to give in service that uplifts consciousness in others.
So these stories as allegories to our own personal individual evolution.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the Martha side, which needs to remember to be hospitable.
Absolutely.
And then the Mary side of that is we're to take that hospitality in the company of the presence, and that's to listen.
To listen.
And there's another part of Mary too, and that is, they say in chapter 11, Mary was the one who anointed the Lord with perfume.
Well, we're getting to that in just a minute.
I know, but I'm saying that's not just listening, that's also serving.
That is serving, but something has happened that allows for this. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and in this, and I haven't looked, but these are two different meetings. They're not the same meeting.
They're not the same meeting.
Yeah. And so,
No, this one I just wanted you to read to catch the relationship and where the discord is.
Yeah.
Okay, Martha says, Jesus, she's not helping, She's not helping. She's wasting her time. Have you ever been with someone who thinks you're not doing anything because you're studying and you're not out there working and burning yourself out like the rest of the world? Yeah, because there is nothing more important than being open and receptive to the truth about yourself and what you are here to do. And because she studied with Jesus, she knew to what was exactly the kind of service she needed to give, which was to anoint his feet, because he was going to go through a crucifixion. The feminine nature, the intuitive nature, was the first to grasp the picture. Even though the disciples had studied with Jesus for 3 years, it never sank in that he was going to be crucified and resurrected. He told them a number of times. She got it.
Right.
She got it. And so she brought myrrh. Now this is what absolutely fascinates me. That Mary, bitterness. Martha, becoming bitter. Myrrh, bitter. All right, all three words mean the same thing. And so she anoints his feet, lifts, she actually serves Jesus in a spiritual way that prepares him for the ordeal he is going to go through. And then Judas says, in other verses, in other Gospels, it's all the disciples. They complain about, that costs too much. You know?
I didn't think I would. Okay, this is surprising me now because I'm seeing the evolution. Because you have Luke here
Yeah.
in chapter 10, Mary and Martha. And you have John 11
Yeah.
and 12,
Uh-huh.
Mary and Martha
Yeah.
and Jesus. And over here, Martha is hospitable. That's a good thing,
Yeah.
right? But then she gets over busy. And Mary, meanwhile, has just sat down and she just and she's listening. But the growth in Mary is she chooses to listen, and then in that listening, she has an intuition
To serve.
to serve in
That's right.
in this way, and intuition can take us to places that we don't even understand. But by listening and hearing, and hearing is what makes it intuitive. You've heard it now from this, and so you do the right thing, even if you, because there's no way from this point she understands the passion and death and all that kind of stuff, but she's just intuitively doing.
She's sitting at his feet.
Yeah.
So feet, understanding. So she's gained her spiritual understanding from being with Jesus. Now, practical lesson here. If you're just doing things that you think are good and service, you're going to be depleted if you do not first make that connection and find out what your gift. I think the best parenting advice I ever heard was tell your children to find their gift. Have them put all their attention on what their gift is. Give them the support they need to develop that, and you will have no worries about it. That sort of blew me away because it's not usually what parents do. It's not usually what they do.
Yeah,
And
usually,
it's
yeah.
and-
Well, people don't give themselves enough time. Actually, they rush into things.
And this is Myrtle, one of the most necessary and important things is that each individual soul be about the things that it is embodied to do. This is from How to Let God Help You.
About the things what?
It is embodied to do. There's a plan.
Yeah, we are incarnated to do.
Yeah, there is something that each of us is incarnated to do, and lucky is the person who finds it early on. And so Mary, you see, there's a Martha in us and there's a Mary in us. But if Mary and Martha are in tune, our service is joyful and appropriate.
You know who they remind me here of these two different functions? Where their dysfunction is Abraham. He was hospitable. He welcomed the three visitors. Right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
And had and called for to kill the goat or whatever it was.
Sure.
And had them served up, but never lost his enthusiasm for listening and being in company with them and having a conversation.
That's when he got his name changed
He
too.
did both. He was Mary and Martha.
Yes.
At their best.
Yeah. And hospitality, you have to understand that hospitality was like at the top of their list. That if you shared a meal with someone, you were bound together for life. Probably the worst thing you could do would be to betray your host.
You can see, who would guess that these two scripture passages tie so beautifully into what Abraham that was his way. Abraham knew it way ahead of time.
Okay.
Abraham practiced it way ahead of time. You can see Abraham here doing all the right stuff.
Well, so what unites Mary and Martha? Myrrh. Because what she anointed his feet with, spikenard, and myrrh. Myrrh, okay, and we were talking about this the other day, about how Mary and Martha and myrrh all have the same essential meaning, and how odd it is that Mary, the divine mother, would have bitterness, but it's the capacity to move through bitter experiences. It's not just that quality, but it's the capacity to overcome. And Mother Mary had to go through watching her son be crucified, and Mary of Bethany saw that her teacher was going to be crucified. And so it was myrrh that united the two ladies. And here we have this picture, which I hope you all have. Lazarus. Once the I am, that's what Lazarus represents. On the immature level, it's the ego. It's just the human ego, I, me, mine. Lazarus has died because he has been functioning in that purely intellectual human consciousness, and he is resurrected, and you can go through the steps, take away the stone. Jesus gives thanks. All right. Father, I know you hear me, because you always do, but I'm doing this so that people around here will believe. Okay? And Lazarus, come out. And that's a powerful statement. The loud voice means not loud in volume, but with intensity and with great power. He could have been whispering it. Lazarus comes out, and here's Lazarus. He's waking up. He's got all these bandages around him. Release him and let him go. Okay, and so here they all are. This is in chapter 12. Here they all are. Here's Lazarus, and now, because the I am is reconnected to the Christ, see him touching the chair that Jesus is sitting in. And here's Mary at his feet, and there is Martha serving. And look at the halos around each one. All are enlightened in divine order. This picture tells the whole story without any words. And so the sisters and the brothers have to be, the two aspects of the soul have to be connected. And so it's Mary who anoints Jesus' feet with myrrh that prepares him for the resurrection that is to come. Okay. So, those are the two sisters, the two sets of sisters that I have chosen to talk about. And there is in every gospel the story of a woman. Notice it's always a woman. Here she is named Mary of Bethany. And spikenard and myrrh, the two oils, spikenard represents power, spiritual power, and myrrh represents eternal life. It's the emblem of resurrection. Okay. And so that's all I'm going to say about Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. And it is now 8 o'clock, and so if anybody wants to call in, the phone number is 816-301-6304. And
you know what's interesting is that when I looked up Martha's name as far as the language helps. And it's really Martha's an Aramaic name as opposed to a Hebrew name.
Yeah.
But the closest that the language can get is that Martha in the Aramaic refers to like a woman in charge, even a woman priest.
A woman in charge.
A woman
definitely.
Servant. Yeah.
Definitely.
A woman, this is her household. This is her
She's
to give,
thought to
serve.
be the older of the two.
Oh, I'm sure she was.
Yes, she's like the matri. Well, she was definitely in charge and serving in an outer way, and that is important. But any service that you give has to come from that place of connection. What happens if you're doing something half-heartedly?
Oh, yeah, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
It never gets too beautiful, right?
Oh, or I think I'll do this because it'll make me a ton of money, and I hate doing it, but don't do it.
And then when I looked at Mary, it is Hebrew. It is connected to Miriam,
Mm-hmm.
and in the Egypt language, in the Egyptian language, it's Maryeh, and it means the beloved.
Uh-huh. Okay. And metaphysically, it represents the capacity of the soul when it is fully connected to the source to overcome anything. Okay. Even death.
Say that again. Where's that
Okay.
come from?
All right. It comes, the metaphysical meaning of Mary, Martha, and myrrh. The truth is that life is eternal. But Mary and Martha, even though they had been studying with, Jesus and being friends with Jesus, they had fallen into the illusion that, their brother had died. And that, therefore, after 4 days, the King James says, he stinketh. They thought that Lazarus was gone. It doesn't mean that there's no such thing as a physical death, but in the spiritual realm, life is eternal, and anything can happen to your body. And if that connection is maintained, you will be aware of the eternal life that is flowing through you.
And I just noticed in this reading, I never noticed before, that in chapter 11, and we're talking about verses 21 and 22, and we're talking about Martha going out to see Jesus before he gets back to Bethany, and it's always been my experience of even serious students. They talk about, if you had been here, my brother would not have died when she says that. But I can't help but be gripped by verse 22, where she says, "But even now, I know whatever you ask of God, God will give you." It's that 21 isn't the end of it. She's there's some part of her, even if she doesn't, even if she's not consciously aware of it, those words come out of her mouth, and they're beautiful. Even now, Jesus says.
Well, sure, because, all right, when you have forgotten the truth on the level where it counts, but your intellect is still saying, I know, Jesus, you can, God's going to give you anything, all right? But do we truly believe in a situation where, say you are, somebody dies, and I'm saying, oh, life is eternal, and you say, yeah, I know. I know life is eternal, and he's going to be fine, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. But, there's that but he's not here, and he's stinky in the tomb. And it's like the reality of the truth has not sunk in.
You know, and not that there's, that's perfectly true, and I'm sure we've all experienced where there's many things going on at the same time. But I think there is an aspect here where it's kind of like the opposite of that. Is that her mind has told her all this stuff is going on, and yet somewhere in her gut she knows that even now she's not a separate person. All right? Remember, these are not separate people. These are all part of one consciousness, and there's a part of you. And so then she goes and gets Mary, gets her out of the house. What's in the house? Affliction. All the Jews are crying and weeping, and when Jesus sees Mary weeping, who is supposed to know the truth from all of her studies, she's weeping. She's fallen into the illusion as well, and Jesus wept. Because when the truth hasn't sunk in, when you have, if you, say you studied with me for 3 years and you demonstrate in a situation that none of it has really sunk in. And that would be awful. Jesus wept. Yes.
So this goes back to Leah and Rachel, which is a fascinating story, and I wrote down all of the sons and the daughter. And there's supposed to be 12, right, total sons?
Well, no, Benjamin hasn't been born.
Benjamin hasn't been born. Okay, the story continues, yeah. But anyway, so here's my question. If we think of Leah and Rachel as two aspects of ourselves, these two sisters, maybe the left prefrontal cortex and whatever, anatomically, but some part of ourselves, where does God come in? God saw that Leah was unloved, so he opened her womb. What's the God? The God aspect is some higher aspect of ourself.
Christ.
Can you explain how that.
The Christ.
How would that story with this sister part of ourselves that's unloved, this other sister who's beautiful but is not fertile, and the God part saying, "Oh, I see that you're unloved." I don't understand how you can translate all that to something happening inside of me, Jim Fleming, or
okay.
Eleanor Fleming.
Well, I can't convince you, but I'll try.
Well, no, I'm not. I guess it's a little bit of a challenge.
Okay.
It's a challenge.
I'm sometimes there is a conflict between two goods.
Okay.
There are two things that you want, but there's this illusion that you can't have both. You can have love and children. Wouldn't that be more normal? But because of the chaos that has gone on and the deceptions and the manipulation and all of that, God is saying, Leah, this is the compassionate God within you saying, okay, but you're going to have the sons, and Reuben is going to have the birthright, and look, you're going to have this, and Rachel has, that would be my choice. I'd take love if I had to choose, but you don't have to choose. You don't have to choose.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's a good question because, and a good answer because, and there's a process, a principle, a law being applied here. Is that when I feel a conflict within myself, I need to go to that compassionate Christ part of me that has the power to reconcile these differences.
Yeah. and love oneness. He loved Rachel, but it was out of order. Things were out of order in that whole story, and they were out of order when Jacob came there, and so everything was out of order, and the only way they could reconcile it was when Laban, her father, who had cheated her, helped her cheat, when her father agreed to a covenant with Jacob. So then we had a little non-aggression pact there. And then because of that, then Leah and Rachel came to an agreement. That's about as close as you can come. They came to an agreement. I see it as kind of, okay, that's the way it is.
Yeah,
that's the best possible outcome that we can have at this point. And so Rachel is still the most loved, and and look at the order of first the cattle and sheep and goats, and then the maids and their kids, and then
in most teachers and most lessons focus on the conflict, when what you have shown us here is all this resolution and the glory and the power of the resolution of bringing resonance back into ourselves within our, take these conflicts and let them resolve, let them find peace and have altars of peace and have shrines of peace and have inner peace, right?
Yes, and I would say even more that the whole purpose of conflict is to push us to deeper levels of ourselves where we can, when we realize there is a resolution.
One means that Jim has brought us back to Genesis, and I hadn't thought about this question because I was focused on other things, but what's the deal with Rachel stealing the family gods?
Yeah, okay. Well, the justification that she gives is that these household gods, they don't have any power anyway. And it was sort of her way of getting back at her dad, who does believe in the, who does believe in.
So it was it wasn't that maybe they were made of gold and she was.
Oh, no. But you see, the household gods, you remember when Abraham was called to go to Canaan? They grabbed the household gods. What are these household gods?
Yeah.
It's like every household had it. It'd be like if you had a statue of Lakshmi or something, some
wolf's tooth or something.
Yeah, exactly. That they have no power in themselves, and it was like for Laban. This is my interpretation. They were important because in that part of the country.
Well, sometimes you keep relics of things that have happened. It could be very positive. It could be,
there's nothing wrong with it. Yeah, it's not idolatry. Is the point? It's not like that.
Yeah. But she was just kind of getting back at it.
Yeah, and hiding them.
Yeah. And then using her condition to. Not be exposed.
Exactly. So a little bit of trickery on her part.
So we play games with ourselves?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And we make up these justifications. We reframe things in our own mind so that we look blameless and someone else is. Yeah. It's that. And it's all due to the lack of a sense of connection with that I am presence. If that was there wouldn't be this competition and aggression, and there wouldn't be jealousy and,
and if you notice, I just now noticed this myself, is that Mark is doing a bunch of talking in this passages, and Mary isn't saying anything. Mary isn't saying. She's very quiet.
Yeah.
So that gives, there's a hint there, don't you think? The quietness?
The quietness, yes. And the quietness is that place of centeredness and peace that allows then for an outer expression that is of value and, you're in fine.
38 to 42, and John 12, 1 to 8, Mary doesn't say a word.
And you see, what you do out here is a projection of your mental, emotional state.
And so she's into the quiet. She's into the silence.
Yes,
She's
exactly.
into the still point.
Yes, she's going for spiritual understanding.
Yeah.
And because of that, the I am presence, Lazarus, is resurrected. It comes back to life. So then we have a complete soul, a resurrected Lazarus, and a redeemed Martha, all due to Mary, who is quiet.
I did see a linguistic discussion. I was looking in some book. Lazarus. The sound getting to the name is lox sarx, which, if you translated those two words in Greek, it's what moves through the body.
Uh-huh.
And so what you were saying about Lazarus' death was a death of this body, and his resurrection is an awakening to.
Well,
right.
Yeah. I'm saying that for us, because you're not,
Right.
I'm saying that for each one of us, the lesson is that being spiritually dead, being spiritually unaware of your spiritual power, of your guidance, of your of the abundance, of the incredible power, all the power, all the love, every good that you can have is so available in you as it is in every moment in space and time. And to the degree that we are unaware of that, we are spiritually dead.
Yeah.
Okay, so that sense of separation from the source, that's the big sin. And idolatry is making anything or anyone more important in our existence than the power and presence within us. That's what idolatry is. It has nothing to do with household gods. And so in Myrtle, I got all these quotes. This was not really part of the class, but I thought they were so relevant because she put such emphasis on and she was so conscious of when it was time for her to leave. She wasn't ill. She knew that she had completed what she had come here to do. And that is what makes me so in awe of her. It's something that the Aborigines in Australia knew as well. And when they felt it was time for them to go, they consulted oneness, and if they got a positive response, they would go off into the wilderness and just, like Myrtle, poof, and continue to shower their blessings from the other side. And so life is eternal, and that's why I think at Ninth and Tracy, at least I can feel Myrtle's presence still there.
So how did they spend any time ministering in that building?
The whole time.
The whole time.
That's
That
where
was their building.
that was the first structure that was theirs. And it contained all departments of Unity. Silent Unity began there. The telephone prayer ministry, I should say, began there. All the healing.
I need to finish that book. Story.
Yeah, everything happened there. There was no other place, no matter what the village claims, that never happened there. That was their place of relaxation after the Sunday service, they would go out there.
Now, I think I remember because I took a tour with you
Yeah,
the first time I was there.
you're right.
And Murdo has an office upstairs. Murdo has
Yes, on the 3rd floor. And then Unity expanded, and so then there was a building next door, the whole block between 9th and 10th on Tracy.
So that building on the corner there on 9th was also theirs? That
Yeah.
one that's still there?
Yeah. That was the Vegetarian Inn, the administrative building. When there was standing room only, they had to move the administrative part and the printing and all that next door. They had all these maintenance buildings. They had a radio.
So is there
Transmitter?
a floor above the floor where that altar is?
Uh-huh.
We didn't go to that floor.
We didn't. I think we did.
You think we did?
Yeah.
Could you show me again one time?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I went to sit in her office.
Yeah.
She was totally intuitive. I don't know. I'm getting an intuition that she was totally intuitive.
She was so simple and so clear. She was like Emily Cady in that. And yet she excuse me. Wow. Excuse me. Anyway. That's why it hurts to see it unfinished.
Yeah, I'm still. I haven't. Still haven't. I don't know. I don't have any solid thoughts about
Yeah.
the structure or anything.
Right.
Like that. Yeah. No questions.
Yeah, no questions. I guess
You
nobody.
think anybody's available if you can they even hear it?
Bob would have called.
If he didn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was looking at trying to follow the story of.
Can you get it on your computer? Go to truthunity.
I wasn't checking.
Go to truthunity.net.
To see if it's.
Yeah.
Jerry won.
Jerry.
I was looking at the summary of the sons of Jacob,
Got this
and
tickle.
somehow the one that wasn't accounted for was Issachar, which was one of Leah's sons. And I didn't see where Issachar had been mentioned being born until
Yeah.
Daniel said it was one of his.
One of the maids.
No, for Genesis.
Unity.
Truthunity.net.
And
Click on the arrow where it has my name.
let's see. Home, people, prayer, tracks. Would it be, let's see what the classes are. Courses?
Yeah.
Courses. Relationships in the Bible.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Well, No, go to my page /New Foundation Unity, and then my page should come up.
I don't know. I've never been there, so I can't help you. I'll slow you down. I mean, I haven't been.
truthunity.net /New Foundation Unity.
Well, there's courses /New Foundation Unity.
That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, it says, oh, click here to watch live broadcast. Okay, there it is. Let's see if it's working.
Yeah. There you go. It's a little bit delayed, but yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. The Issachar is at Genesis 30:18, Jim. And
Issachar is one of Zilpah's, I guess.
Where was Issachar?
verse 18, chapter 30.
Okay. All right. Well, I hope Bob
Yeah, and everybody from Texas.
and everybody from Texas, I don't know,
And then you have somebody else up in Maryland right now, Virginia?
West Virginia,
West Virginia.
Margaret.
That's a beautiful country. I love driving through it.
Yeah.
Hopefully everybody.
Okay.
It's a bad time for things to mess up because you got a lot of people looking for audit or credit or something, right?
Well, they didn't mess, it's there. I think that Mark just needs to put the link on there so that they go to New Foundation Unity from his website.
Yeah.
But anyway, if you are listening, God bless you. I appreciate you, and we'll try again next week. And our topic for next week is friendship. So I would urge you to read the story of Ruth and Naomi in the book of Ruth, and then also the friendship between Jonathan and David, which is in 1 Samuel, and it carries on in a lot of places. And notice the difference between friends, the relationship between friends, and the relationships between sisters and brothers and these other ones. And notice where the conflict arises, if there is one.
Yeah, Jonathan's a sad story.
Yeah.
But that's just
Yeah.
It's just my memory. It could come out completely different when we reread it.
It's a real love story.
Oh yeah.
And
Saul's the bummer in that whole deal.
And there is a way that the rivalry between David and Saul is resolved. And remember that story I told you about Mephibosheth?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that does it. He brings him in. That's what love is with David. David represents love. Brings in the crippled, and says, yeah, you're part of the whole. Oh, great lesson tonight on sisters. Very insightful as always.
Who was that?
Chris from church.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So,